Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Search Engine Journal webinar. It's a beautiful day here in West Virginia, and today we are joined by the Page One Power team, who will be talking to us about the SEO wars, how to earn links organically and resist the dark side. We as search marketers are constantly trying to navigate Google's frequent changes when it comes to link building, and it's been nothing short of a battle, let's be real about it. While it remains an important SEO activity, the link building process has changed dramatically. Today, we're going to talk about planning and managing a link building strategy, how you can create linkable content, and ways you can find quality link opportunities and proper outreach to get those links. My name is Heather Campbell, and I'll be moderating for you today. Michael, can you tell us a little bit about your team and Page One Power before we get into some of the webinar housekeeping tips?
Absolutely. So everyone, thank you so much for attending. I'm Michael Johnson. I am the sales manager at Page One Power. A lot of the topics we'll be talking about is developing a link building strategy from start to finish. And while I know a little bit about everything across the board, I'm not an expert in any one topic. So I thought, what better way to show expertise than to invite the experts. So we've got Danica McClure with us today, who is a content outreach expert here at Page One Power. She specializes in earning links through content and guest posting, those kinds of tactics. We have Tyler Bain, who's a project manager. So he, day in and day out, is working with our clients here, helping them to execute their strategies successfully and reporting on those. We've got Alex Gibson, who is an outreach coordinator at Page One Power. So he specializes in research link building strategies like resource page links, unlinked mentions, all those kinds of tactics. And then we've got Norm Vogel, who is a content strategist here at Page One Power, and he develops a lot of our on-page content strategies for clients, helping them to develop linkable assets and find success there. So really excited. We've got some really good experts here that are ready to show you how they, day in and day out, execute these kinds of strategies.
Great, thanks, Michael. And for everybody out there watching today, I've seen the dry run. This is a great, it's going to be very engaging. So we have a lot of people to talk to you about link building. And so I'm very excited to get into it. Before we do though, however, we got a couple housekeeping tips. So if during this training presentation you have any questions or comments, please put them in the question box at the lower bottom of your screen. As you're learning and taking in the information, ask for further clarification. I mean, chances are you're not the only one thinking about that question. So we're also going to be throwing in a couple poll questions through this training just to kind of gauge your level of expertise and help our presenters present better to you and to the knowledge that you may already have. So, with any of our webinars, we're always searching for an engagement score. Our last webinar, we had an engagement score of 68. Our goal is 70. So if we can keep you all engaged, asking those questions, participating in the polls, that's going to help us meet our goals. And so we're also going to do our best throughout to link to any resources or tools in the chat. But if we miss one, use the questions box to ask. Again, any questions and all of them are always welcome. After the webinar, please stick around for a short survey. It doesn't take any more than 5 minutes. This information really helps us gauge what works for you and how we can make SEJ webinars more useful for you and your learning. And lastly, you will receive the full recording of this training later today. And so, I mean, that's enough about me. Let's get into it. Michael, it's all yours.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and do that poll question really fast. So the poll question, what we were looking to learn from you was your current understanding regarding link building, or your team's current efforts regarding link building. So we have a few different options there. One of them is, hey, we're doing great, no problems here. Another one is, hey, we're doing okay, but we want to learn more. So go ahead and go and check off the one that best aligns with your needs and with where you're at, and that'll help us understand where you're coming from and how we can best customize and custom tailor this presentation for you. So we'll give you a couple minutes here to take a look at that and fill out your answers.
We've got 67% voted, 68, 69. Let's see if we can get it to 70. There we go. All right, gonna close the poll. Michael, all yours.
All right. So let's go ahead and get right into the conversation here. And look at that. I love it when we have those two middle ones, because that means you're in the right place, right? You're trying to build links but need a little bit of help, or you're looking to start a campaign. So you're all in the right place if that's the case. And I think the information that we have for you today will be really beneficial. All right. So a few of the questions that we hope to answer for you today as we go through our presentation are questions like, how do I get real humans to actually want to link to my site? How do I know what links are safe and what will drive results? What kinds of content actually helps me earn links? How can I create that linkable content? How do I find the right person to contact on a target site? And how can I sound more personable and communicate value in my outreach? And if we get around to it, we'd even love to try to answer your Star Wars questions, like did Han shoot first? That might be a little bit of a softball, but hey, we'll see what happens. All right, so to start off, what I like to do is make sure that we're all using the same definitions, right? Because link building, link acquisition, white hat, organic, these words all mean different things to different people. So we really want to talk about earning truly organic links. And to me, what makes a link truly organic is that it is earned by building a genuine connection with another human being. So you or someone on your team or your agency, whatever, however you're getting your links, has built a real relationship with another human being, and they are earning a link that is based on merit. So they're linking back to you because of the value that you're providing to real humans on their website, to their audience. If those are the kinds of things that you're looking at and that your links represent, then you're on the right track for your links being truly organic. Now, what is it not? These are things that if you're doing these things, or these are qualities within your links, you might not be earning truly organic links. First is if it's paid for. If any time money changes hands for a link, it's no longer link building, it's advertising. Next, if it's thrown up on a site that anybody or their Wookiee can publish on. So if it's a site that people just get back-end access and can write really low quality content for and throw up pieces, that's probably not a truly organic link. And then last, if it's created through some kind of scheme, whether that's a PBN, a link exchange, etc., that might not be a truly organic link. So look at these things and ask yourself these questions as you're developing a link building strategy, as you're looking at links that are coming in for your site that can help you know if they are truly organic. Now, if you want to build out a successful link building strategy, you're going to need to have these 4 aspects in place to be successful. First is you're going to need great linkable content that speaks to audiences, that engages the web, and that provides value to those audiences. Next, you're going to need to have target sites. You're going to need to have a lot of them. The typical conversion rate for a link building campaign can range anywhere from 1 to 10%. So you can very quickly see how to get any decent number of links. You're going to need hundreds or maybe even thousands of sites to try to reach out to earn links. Next, you're going to need time for outreach to get a hold of all those webmasters and editors at those sites. You're going to need to spend a lot of hours doing outreach. And then last, you're going to need to know the outreach best practices, how to best communicate with those people so you can have compelling, persuasive outreach. And if you have all these things in place, you're going to be successful with your campaign. So without further ado, let's jump into linkable content. And we've got Norm Vogel with us here, who spends all day, every day, looking at linkable content and creating it for clients.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Michael. So I really like getting started with talking about the linkable content itself, because those 4 key building blocks that Michael just talked about, they're all interconnected and they're all interdependent. So your ability to reach good websites and earn those good links, it depends on your outreach, and the quality of your outreach really depends on the quality of the content that you have to offer. So I'm going to jump right to the end of our questions real quick and say, Han did shoot first. And you know how I know? At the beginning of the movie, he's not a good guy. He's very selfish. The only questions he's interested in getting answered are, what's in it for me? How am I going to get paid? How much, right? And unfortunately, that is the attitude that a lot of site owners and content creators have, where they're creating content going, how do I rank for my core keywords? How do I make sure that I feature my brand or my products or my services as prominently as possible? And that orientation to content creation is kind of the worst way to create linkable content. You want to be a little bit more like Luke or like the Jedi, going, what can I offer? What do I have to help? He shows up to the rebellion. He says, hey, I'm a fair pilot. They put him in an X-Wing and he blows up the Death Star, right? So the questions you want to ask are, what unique value do I have to offer? What am I an expert in? What am I good at? What unique takes can I offer? And to whom can I offer them? Don't just say, there might be someone out there who might be interested in reading this. think critically about who your audience is that you want to sell to and what larger universe they're a part of. What larger audience do they mingle in? And how can you serve that larger audience? You still want it to be relevant to your brand. You still want it to be relevant to your core audience. And that overlap of relevance is how you can facilitate natural, non-promotional, non-advertorial mentions of your products and services, and thus house some internal links to your important converting pages, product pages, wherever you're trying to pass authority and equity. So when you put it all together, you're really looking outside yourself going, what do people need? What problems can I help people conquer, understand? What information can I help people discover and explore in a way that offers free value? Because that offer of value is what people are linking to. They're linking to your content and your site and your brand on the merit of an offer that you're making. So to put all this together, we actually have an example here on the next slide, and I'll kind of use this to illustrate how we connect all these dots. So the example we're looking at is Atera, and it sounds a little esoteric, but stay with me. They provide IT support software, and they're B2B, which means they are exclusively selling this software to individuals and businesses that provide basically help desk support to other companies, which is very niche, it's very specific. And when you try to think about target audiences for that, that's very, very limiting. So the first thing we had to do is, how do we make that audience more inclusive so that we have more websites we can go to try to outreach to earn links? And we said, well, potentially women work in tech. There might be an audience of women who work at help desks or are trying to get their foot in the door in the IT industry somehow. So their core audience is still involved in that audience, but we're expanding it to women. And so what value can we offer them? Well, women historically are underrepresented in tech fields as professionals, in tech degrees at the university level. Basically all along the continuum, we can kind of see how women are underrepresented, maybe underserved, and maybe there's an opportunity to provide them a really good resource describing their career opportunities, scholarships, education, resources, networking, all that stuff. And so if you look at the live page we put together, that's exactly what this resource is. It's IT and career resources for women who want to work in tech. Now, going back to Han Solo shot first because he was selfish. We do have internal links in this content pointing to Atera's software, but you'll notice we contextualize them just as one of many resources that might be relevant in this conversation. So the anchor text for the links is very precisely matched to the pages we want to support, so it passes maximum equity and value, but it's not distracting. We're not making it about Atera, we're making it about the audience that they're trying to serve. And in taking that approach, we ended up with a really, really extensive, robust resource that provides a lot of value. And sure enough, we were able to find hundreds of resource pages to outreach, a lot of them with really high value, a lot of authority, including some university and government websites, because we were giving them something for free that was clearly important to people that they actively served. So the stars all aligned, and we were able to get some really, really strong links for this page that ultimately drove results for Atera as a whole.
Let's go ahead and kick it over to Alex and Danica, who are link building experts who day in and day out are doing a lot of the outreach. And we're gonna let them talk to us a little bit about how they find good target sites and then proceed to do good outreach.
Awesome, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Norm. As Michael mentioned, I do spend all day, every day thinking about resource links and content and how to help our clients find the best place for this content. We do a lot of work that Norm mentioned about making sure we create content for a real audience and real people. And just as the Jedi understand that the Force is a binding energy between all living people, one of the binding energies of the internet is human value. And we can't forget that we're real people on the internet and there are other real people out there on the internet. And so in the research department, when we're doing our site finding, our main goal in looking for sites that we think that our content would fit on is relevance and community or activity on these sites. There are plenty of other sort of third-party metrics and other authoritative metrics that we can look at, but we don't usually put a whole lot of emphasis on those because, as we've been talking about, we create the content with specific people or groups of people in mind, and we know that those groups of people have their little corner of the internet with loads of websites that they're interacting with every day, and most of the time they may not have very high authority metrics, but they're a great place for our content. So starting with that in mind, one of the first steps, and maybe, for lack of a better word, easiest ways to go and ways to start looking for those websites are just keyword Boolean searches, where we can put in, that group of people like women in tech and in URL resources that will really help us find those pages that are geared to that community and have lists of other resources similar to ours that are helping that same group. And then another tactic that we use in the research department and in the Page One Power as a whole is competitor backlinking. We can take another B2B IT management company and find the websites that are linking to them, and then we can say, hey, we have similar content. We're a similar company with similar values, and then we can find loads of sites that they're linking to that also would be willing to link to our site. And then, so that's kind of how we do it in the research department, and Danica's going to talk a little bit about the content department.
Yeah, you guys really surprised me today because I don't know how to talk about Star Wars or how to connect any of these things with Star Wars. So thanks everyone for helping me out with that one. I'm not going to agonize you with trying to make a metaphor here because it will get ugly very quickly. But just to kind of piggyback off of what Alex has said, our content team does a lot of the same kinds of site finding techniques that the research team does. We're always looking for organic opportunities. We do the Boolean searches. There is for sure competitor backlinking involved, because that not only allows us to see like what the competitor is doing, but how they're doing it and how we can better strategy, like what Norm is doing, like better utilize strategy in order to provide, like better content or more optimized content just for whatever purpose it serves. So he said all of that so well. I don't want to just reiterate what he said, but I wanted to add a little bit of additional context. So if you feel like you're maybe hitting a wall with using some of those techniques or looking for more creative ways that you might use the tools at your disposal, I would just look at the tools that you do have access to and try to utilize them in new ways that you might not have thought of before. We at our company, we actually call this SEM rush, and then we had a meeting and it was like, wait, is it SEMrush? I truly don't know to this day still. I think it's SEMrush, so I apologize in advance. But just use those tools like at your disposal in unique ways, like with SEMrush. I sometimes will look at the competitors to the site that you're targeting. And we'll see like if there's a 1 to 10% chance that someone's going to respond to your email, you might as well target multiple people in that niche that you want to be on as well. As far as Majestic and Moz goes, there's tons of ways to utilize those tools in like unique and creative ways. So if you find yourself hitting that Boolean wall or you're just tired of looking at Google all day, we've all been there, just use different tools in different ways and you'll find totally new opportunities to do that. And yeah, with Majestic and Moz specifically, you can totally see like, is your content comparable with your competitors? What are their gaps? What opportunities are they missing out on? And then what are you missing out on? And you can create totally new relationships that will result in like really powerful links for your website. And then even if you don't have these tools fully readily available and you're more looking at Boolean searches, look for guest authors on the target site and Google their bio, because generally speaking, most content authors use the same bio over and over again. So you can find very like easy win opportunities just by Googling other people and what those writers are doing. And from there, you can work on refining your pitches for the site's audience. And then I'm gonna swing it back over to Alex to discuss some of those outreach techniques.
Thanks, Danica. And don't worry about the Star Wars thing. I'm sure we all have other references and metaphors we can bring in. Yeah, so once we've done all this work in creating really quality linkable content with a real purpose in mind and a real community and audience in mind, The next step is to find those, the people on those sites who manage those sites, and then let them know about this great content that we have. And so when we're thinking about link building outreach, one of the most important things is that we find the correct person to email. And to be honest, sometimes on these smaller sites, it's kind of hard to see. They just maybe only have list one email on the website, or they don't really have staff profiles or any other way to find them. But the best case scenario, we do find a staff profile with an email that is someone who's in charge of the page that we're looking at, or they just say that they're like the resource coordinator or some title that way. Or, other times we reach out to universities, and maybe a department head or a member of that department is the best person to outreach to. Oftentimes it's just a webmaster in smaller sites. I'm just listing these to try to give an idea of, you may have to think outside the box a little bit about the person that you're going to outreach to. It might not be, who you think at first, but then, often we do have to outreach to the info at, or like the questions at, or communications at, just because we can't find another source. And, don't be afraid. We have found success using that. It's totally fine to email those, but if you can, find the best person to outreach to. Then the next step is to write the brief subject lines. I think we're all pretty aware of inboxes and how annoying some emails can be and how spammy some things can get. So really do your best to make sure that the people you're outreaching to know that you're an actual person and that you've curated content for actual people, and do your best with subject lines to write brief ones. But also in subject lines and in the email body, please avoid salesy and vague language. We're not, again, has been mentioned, we're not advertising, we're not looking for promotional stuff, and we're really not centered on our client, mostly just the people that we're trying to help in their community and their profession and with the resources that we build. So do your best to put all that into a concise outreach email, and then if you can, send some follow-up emails. So again, you don't want to be pestering or annoying with too frequent or too many. We've found success with 3 to 4 follow-up emails, or I guess I should say 2 to 3 follow-up emails, and then anywhere from 5 days to 2 weeks in sending those follow-ups. Is there anything else I'm forgetting or leaving out, Danica?
No, you said that brilliantly. But I will say, on the content side of things, in a lot of cases, people who do like similar jobs to what I do in content marketing, and especially in content link building, we do a lot of mental gymnastics to prove that we're not doing exactly what we're doing. And I think that we have like developed this, reaction for a reason. Like, I think anyone who's worked in the industry for a while knows there is a huge stigma against link builders. And I think part of the reason that stigma exists might be a little bit justified. I think a lot of people just don't put genuine care and thought, which is something we've all talked about. Like, part of what makes us so like successful in a link building campaign is like truly building the content that people need to see, want to see, answering their questions. And so it really has to go through a reframing process of what you're doing, where you're not sort of selfishly just like hoping that the things will come to you without earning them. And you have to really build that audience and think of them when you're creating this content. So getting over this stigma, really what you have to do is do the opposite of what people have been doing over the last 10 years. And I think the golden rule in my job, like when I wake up every day, it's just don't waste people's time. And if you like, it may be like just the millennial in me that's like, receiving an email is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But I think this is a multi-generational problem, right? Like, nobody wants to receive an unsolicited email that's not relevant to them, and where you can tell very quickly that their audience has not been thought of, that they haven't been thought of. And so if you're sending legitimate outreach, you have to know that you're fighting with like hundreds of other emails, in their inbox. So if you really just like do the work ahead of time to create something that has value in every aspect of your link building campaign, you're going to see success eventually. So like, explain you are and like who you are and what your experience is, hone in on a pitch that will benefit the site and their audience as well as yours, and then show them examples of what you've created or been a part of. Like, show them through your pitch what you're capable of doing so both of you benefit from it, and that's going to be like golden for you. And yeah, I think I'm just going to send it back off to Michael.
I had muted myself. All right. Thank you, Danica. That was fantastic. So yeah, talking about measuring the quality of links, right? So you've done all these efforts to put yourself in a position to earn links. You started out, by creating great linkable assets that engage audiences that are relevant to you. Again, it's your linkable content is more about the who and less about the what. It's about who you're trying to help and benefit through your content, how that audience relates back to your audience. So focus on your audience, not your brand. From there, you're going to try to find great target sites, and Alex and Danica did a great job talking about that. And then from there, when you're outreaching those audiences, I know in my conversations with a lot of prospects, one of the things that they always talk about is the outreach portion of link building. They get so hung up on the outreach as like the culminating event, and it's the moment where links are built, when really your links aren't built with your outreach. Your links are built with all the steps that you took leading up to that moment. And that's, I think Norm mentioned that concept in his section, and I think that's so true. So you've done all this effort though to get to this point. Once you start getting links, how can you know what links are good, what's actually benefiting you, and what will create results? What we found here at Page One Power, after over a decade of building links, is 3 primary factors that lead to great results for our clients in the links that we build. Number 1 is always relevance. So this means, is there a logical reason why we've targeted this site? Does the audience make sense for our client? Does it make sense to their industry? It's about building that real connection. Now remember, relevance doesn't mean, is this website the core people who buy from me, right? There are other spheres of relevancy that relate to your industry, relate to your brand, that you can explore to create opportunities to earn links from. And creating those spheres of relevancy are critical to helping you have enough breadth in your subject matter on your site and enough of a big enough target audience to earn links. So use relevancy as a way to measure the quality of your links. Next is human value. So this comes down to the site having a community. Alex talked a lot about this. Does the website have a community? Does it have engagement happening there? Does this site exist for a purpose outside of SEO? I get emails every day from people trying to sell me links at certain DA ranges, and there are little businesses created from just creating websites, building links to them to build their authority, and then selling links from those websites. That's why looking for those real, like, non-manipulative aspects, like relevance, like human value, those are the truest sources of quality that I've seen. And that's why we put those things first above any kind of authority metric, because those to me are true indicators of quality for a link. And then last, we look at trust. So to me, trust means looking at the backlinking neighborhood of a site, making sure they don't link out to spam or anything like that. Looking at the editorial standards of the site. I remember a client sending me some example links that a previous vendor had built for them. And again, DA metrics said this was a good site. It's a DA 65, DA 70. But then when I clicked through some of the articles that were on the site, I saw links that were like best car loan websites, stuff like that, that no site that really cared about their audience would be linking to, and would be throwing in exact match anchor text to all these sites, right? It was pure, blog mill spam. So that's why, to me, you want to look at just what's actually being published on the site as well to help you determine if it's a good opportunity. And then last, and I say last on purpose, look at the third-party metrics and those kinds of, look at the DA or the page authority of the site that you're targeting. It's a really good way to then kind of see, okay, now what's some of the authority push that might be having to the SEO value there. But I would never say, like, only get DA 50 plus links, only get DA 40, because depending on your industry, depending on the goal of the link, I will say there are some amazing niche sites that are probably in the DA 15 to 25, 30 range that would be great for your brand. That would be a great fit. That would serve audiences that are relevant to you. So that's why I don't recommend putting hard limits on DA or DR with your link building efforts. Allow yourself to think more along the lines of relevancy and audiences and human value. And that will set you up to have a much more successful link building campaign that speaks to more natural signals than a lot of what you see out there. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about, now that you've got these great links, how do you know if they are creating results and helping you grow? And this is something that Tyler Bain deals with every single day as he talks to clients about the impact of the work and how we're able to help our clients create movement.
Thank you, everybody, and it's good to be here. I appreciate you all, everything you added, and I hope to wrap this up with a nice bow. You know, like Luke, he wanted to become a Jedi, and that's what he stated, and that's a pretty lofty goal. And in some cases, in most cases, the majority of the SEO strategies that we work on with clients are really only as good as their goals. And what those goals are outlined, and specifically what you're looking to accomplish. Are you looking to gain increased traffic? Are you looking for specific keyword rankings? Are you just wanting to beat the competitor that you know you can because you have the best content, you have the best website, you offer the best product because you know they do it cheaply? Whatever those might be, outlining your goal, even if it's as broad as becoming a Jedi, like a monk a spiritual monk that uses a lightsaber as a weapon, like your father that you've never met, it's still at least a goal, and it's a direction to go down. And but you want to be honest about those goals and understand the whys behind them. Most of the time, it's motivated by some kind of gain, either being a thought leader or again some kind of rankings or increased traffic to in turn increase revenue. Now, achieving those goals are also incredibly important to monitor, as far as looking at, are these a goal that you want to accomplish in, or is this an incredibly wide goal that you're looking to, again, beat out every competitor in the space, or is it, you know, a more of a lag goal or a lead goal where it's something a little bit more, again, conversion focused or something along those lines? And once you create those goals, then you need to create a plan in order to actually reach them. Again, like Luke being very general about what his goal was in becoming a Jedi, Obi-Wan could have looked at him and said, well, okay, how are you going to be there? You know, or how are you going to get there? Have you ever held a lightsaber? You know, you're basically a farmer. What are you doing to get there? Do you even do push-ups on a regular basis? You know, are you ready for this? He, of course, didn't because there is destiny involved. But in this case, you have to really seize that destiny for yourself. And if you have that goal in mind, again, increased traffic, keywords, and so on, how are you going to get there? Do you have the relevant are you even ranking for the relevant keywords that you outlined? If the answer is yes, then you're already semi there. Are you getting enough traffic, but you want more, or from a particular audience? How do you capture that kind of traffic? Looking at the types of content that you have, what your competition is doing, and really evaluating yourself and being honest about your how do you achieve those goals is really incredibly important. And I think something that is not necessarily thought about when it comes to looking at and creating an SEO plan to accomplish your goals. For instance, one of my favorite things is when a client will come to us saying, I would like to a certain page to rank. And one of the first questions is, have you ever searched yourself via the terms that you might be interested in? So for example, let's say it's lawn care. Have you ever searched lawn care in your area? No, you haven't? Well, let's search and check this out and see what is ranking. What is Google already saying is doing well? And in turn, that's a way to say you want lawn care as your main focus, or whatever the SaaS term might be, or what have you. What's your competition doing? What's out there already? And do you have that, or are you missing those gaps? In turn, start to kind of figure out exactly the direction and how to get that overall goal that you mentioned. And then, of course, there's the timeline of any of these and tracking any results is arguably one of the most difficult parts of reporting to clients and or staying on target in this case. So a lot of SEO campaigns, especially working with our organization or others, other industries within this space, it takes time. You know, just like any kind of marketing campaigns or social strategies. Typically, an average campaign for us takes about 6 to 12 months to really come to fruition. That's content creation. That's technical support. That's a link building itself. The entire team here mentioned that content creation process that can take some time. The outreach process alone, like Danica mentioned, you can't just do this cookie cutter. You really have to think about what's that unique value. What are you offering in your outreach to really get those individuals to even open your email, let alone actually put a link up or accept your content. And all of that can't be done in a vacuum, especially when money's not changing hands or anything like that. And so in turn, that 6 to 12 month time period can be pretty wide, but we're also talking about potentially some pretty substantial goals that will shift and change as a campaign typically progresses. And then lastly, the overall, what we really want to get out here is measuring those results. When looking at your results that you've outlined is, again, through this entire process that I just discussed, when you're coming up with your goals, part of that involved research, creating that plan and so on. So hopefully at this point you have some kind of baseline. You're ranking here, you want to rank better, or you're not ranking at all, so you would like to rank in general. You want to get more traffic and so on. So you have that A, now you need that B. And so a lot of the time we use particular third-party tools to measure those results. It's consistent, it helps with research and so on. So you have SEMrush, of course, Google Analytics, Ahrefs is fantastic. But really, we list a few things here. Google Search Console, we list a few things here, including Google's two main platforms for tracking keyword rankings, page rankings, and so on, because not just one tool is the perfect tool. It really is one of the things that I mentioned to a lot of our clients is, what are you currently using internally, and how can that be better utilized to communicate those results that we're looking for, that you've outlined in your SEO goals and the plan that we're implementing here. If that's SEMrush, great, let's use that, but let's also supplement it with more one-to-one tracking tools like Google Analytics, Google Search Console, and so on. Another thing that we mentioned is when communicating these results, it's being able to have utilize enough time to say, what were your results? Look at in the next maybe a month or 3 months or so, look at where you're currently at, and in turn, be willing to adjust your current strategy, or understand that because things take time, you might need to adjust your overall plan, but your goals can still remain the same. And utilizing tools like this can really help in communicating to your either higher ups, your boss, if you're the CEO or owner operator, to yourself, to really get a realistic idea of where you're at and where you want to go, and in turn, what needs to be done in creating an additional plan or additional goal and adjusting those and implementing your strategy. And it's an ever-evolving, what is it, Ouroboros, the snake eating, it's just a forever a cycle that is not just a one-time thing and you're done. No different than one-time marketing strategy and you're done. No different than you only tweet once and then you don't have to tweet ever again, which I kind of wish would be the case, but it's not. So again, I think that going back to everything we just said, having a solid goal, we're doing enough research to be able to implement a plan, understanding that the results take time to not only implement, but see, understanding that through that time period, you might need to readjust your plan, but then having a solid foundation of results measuring to really see where you were and where you're going or where you're at in a 3 to 6 month time period generally.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tyler. And thank you so much to everybody. What we want to do next is jump in and do a little bit of a Q&A and answer your questions. Like I said, we've got experts here that are doing this all the time, and we'd love to answer your questions, help you troubleshoot issues within your own link building strategies. I do believe we've got another poll question though. So if we want to go ahead and throw that up there. What we also want to offer is that while you're welcome to ask our team on the webinar today, we'd also love to even do a one-on-one with you. And so we're giving you the opportunity here to do a one-on-one consultation with a member of our team. If you're interested in that, you can click yes, please. This would be something that we do research ahead of time. We'd ask you some questions via email. Then from there, jump on a call and really help you troubleshoot issues within your link building strategy one-on-one. So go ahead and we'll let you fill that out. And as soon as that poll closes, we can kick it over to the Q&A.
Yeah, and so, we'll give this just another second. We got about 50% voted, so we give you guys another couple seconds to see if we get some more in there. But while we're waiting for that, the amount of questions that we have received today is tremendous. So Page One Power Team, you're gonna have a lot of follow-up to do. So, get those typing fingers ready. But let's go
We'll be
ahead and
ready to
close
go.
this. Yeah, absolutely. Sharing results, there you go. So you do
All
have
right.
some that are interested. So that's awesome
Hey,
to see.
about
Love
1/3
it.
or something. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. I mean, let's get into it. Let's get into this Q&A section. It's going to be a lot of fun. So one of my favorite questions, and I'm gonna take the first answer on this one. Brandon wants to know which Star Wars movie is your favorite. And Brandon, I'm going to tell you the original trilogy beats all of them. So other than that, I don't know what to say. If there weren't so many of you out there, I would let you all answer that for yourselves. But let's actually get into some link building questions. So Michael is giving a question. This is a question for Tyler. So Tyler, with so much of SEO being fairly abstract, how do you feel when you have to educate clients on a monthly basis to justify the long-term value of link building, particularly with clients who don't trust marketing in general? Well, that's a tough one.
That's a great question. It's something that does come up relatively often, especially in new partnerships. There are so many different ways to communicate to a variety of different people. I think I believe Alex mentioned before that we are people, and who you're communicating to is a person as well. So first and foremost, remember that, and remember that it's not just about the bottom line. But I think that I mentioned earlier that it was about those check-ins and really being able to communicate, even if they're minor, relatively speaking, success points, to really communicate where everything that you're doing is in service to that overall goal that you outlined. So they might not be seeing immediate results like the Atera article that Norm outlined earlier. They didn't see immediate results even from the first, I would say 3, 4 links, 5 links. At that point, by the time we got those, I believe that page was only crawled by Google maybe 3 times at most. And in turn, being able to say, as a reminder, this page is facilitating those internal links that were optimized here. It is currently we've currently acquired many EDU links to this, which have high value in of themselves, as well as its subject matter that is related to our main product, and reminding and reiterating that process, as well as then in turn utilizing that to say, and we did move up a position over the last 30 days. We have moved up from the second page to the bottom of the first, and really saying that is all relative, but that's a nice mile marker to say this we are seeing some kind of progress, and let's continue to adjust this or implement the strategy or adjust as need be, but make sure to constantly check in and really reiterate that what you're working on is facilitating that overall goal. Hopefully, if it's not, there's a whole other issue.
Great, thanks. So Mary asks a question. She's asking, what does DA 15 to 50 mean? So talking about domain authority. Michael, do you want to take that one?
I'm happy to jump in. I get a little flippant with the DA, industry speak, but yeah, it just means domain authority. So it's something that I actually don't care for in the industry, that a lot of people over rely on these third-party metrics. And so what it is, a tool called Moz. And what they try to do is to estimate how likely Google is to rank a website. And the more likely Google is to rank a website, the higher DA they award to that site. And they base it on a variety of factors. A lot of it's like the backlink profile of a site and so on. So basically, the thought for a lot of SEOs is, well, if I want my site to rank well, then I need to get links from the highest authority sites possible. And yes, there is truth to that a higher authority link will carry more SEO value. However, people only think about DA, and then what happens is you miss out on all these amazing link opportunities that would be very relevant, because Google doesn't just look at authority to determine if a link is good for you. They think about relevancy, the audiences that you're trying to serve and in touch with, and what pools you swim in on the web. And the signals that you get from things like relevancy, as well as just like the engagement, and if the website has a real audience and serving people on the web, those are very valuable signals as well. So I always try to consult people and tell them, don't just get so hung up on this one number that you think is an easy shortcut to determining the quality of the site. Instead, look at all these other things that are a little bit more less quantitative, but still very important qualitative aspects to determine the quality of the site. So yeah, DA is just that scale of 1 to 100 of Moz's estimate of how likely Google is to rank a website.
If I may add to that real quick, something I like to do when DA is mentioned is take your domain authority and compare it to some of your competition and see how see if over the course of the year they've changed dramatically. That's a really great way to potentially communicate how to utilize that metric, I should say, if a particular individual or group of people are hung up on it.
Great. So we have a similar question both from Jennifer and Joshua. They're both asking about human value. So Joshua's asking, you mentioned human value. Is there a way to measure or quantify that? And Jennifer's asking if is traffic a good metric to look at human value? So can you expand on that a little bit?
I'd be happy just to really quick chime in, and I'm sure there's other people in the group who would love to chime in on it. To me, traffic is a decent base indicator. Hey, does this site actually get people visiting it? Are there real people there? I think that's a good initial indicator. But then also looking for engagement on the site. So are people commenting on articles? Are there social shares happening on the content on this website? Those signs of community are, to me, really good indicators of human value. And I'll just kind of kick it around to the rest of the group if they have anything they want to add to that.
I can supplement that a little bit. There's a lot of ways that you can measure human value. I wouldn't put one number on it. That's kind of the same trap that you fall into with DA. If you're trying to quantify something so broad and abstract, you're probably not measuring it very accurately. Like social media is not really a ranking factor for Google's search system, but social media can be a great proxy for measuring the size of a community or getting a sense of what level of engagement is common. Or even when you're just looking for target sites, how many different sites exist that I might outreach with a particular page or asset or story. The more websites that you think that would be relevant to, that's also a pretty good measure of human value, either because the size of the audience is so large or because the pain point is so acutely felt. Lots of websites serve that audience or talk about that subject or whatever. That's a really good proxy for measuring human value. Traffic is good, impressions are good. Those are hard numbers. They don't tell a very complex story, but it at least gives you a rough idea of what's going on. Comments and questions and feedback like that, not everyone's set up for that. There's a lot of problems with allowing that kind of user-generated content. So it has some value, but no one of these is probably the only or the best point of reference to assess human value. Some of it, frankly, just kind of comes down to intuition. You can't automate this very easily. There's not an equation that's going to go, human value 81, you're top of your class. And that's also when Tyler's talking about it takes repetition. It's an iterative process. You don't want to get all your links by going viral with one page. You want to create multiple places on your website that are capable of earning links and appealing to people and earning traffic and engaging with people, because it's never a one and done. So human value is also compounded cumulatively across your website and across the different assets that you create for different or overlapping audiences.
The other thing that came into my mind about it real quick was just also from a link perspective, the usefulness of your link on the page, right? If you think about why Google put links in their algorithm in the first place, it was a human factor to their ranking algorithm. It was a way for people to vote on what was valuable and where they're finding value. So think about the usefulness of your link on that page, and is it actually helping the audience when they click that link? Does it take them to a page that they expect to go to and will expand their knowledge? So that's the other part of it as well, is like the link itself and its usefulness to real audiences.
This is a whole other can of worms that this can open up. But I would also, a lot of these questions seem to be fixated on individual links and like looking and monitoring them. Because there's an overall factor in what we're working on or what your SEO goals should be, fixating on an individual link, you're already making your job even more difficult in really looking at what did this one link do for us. I think you already need to go almost back to the drawing board and say, why am I fixated on this one individual link? When in reality, it's really about how is this overall impacting our strategy? What pages is it linking to? What kind of target audience is it going after, and so on. It's easier said than done. That's why we can talk about this for another 45 minutes as far as individual links are concerned. But I would try to get away from that and more talk about the strategy, why you're doing what you're doing, and who you are linking to, and what kind of audience you're really trying to address.
So in talking about strategy, Mary has I'm sorry, Danica, or you want to add to that? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say there's like a little brief thing we could also mention too, which is sometimes the audience isn't like as big, but if you answer the question the best, you're going to get a whole different audience like that will engage with your website in a positive manner. So I mean, even if it's a long tail keyword search that doesn't have a whole lot of volume like attached to it, sometimes that's easier to go after than some of like the big keywords in your niche. It might be easier to answer the smaller questions first, like the questions that people are genuinely like typing into Google, like all the questions you feel like really dumb about typing in there. Sometimes those are like some of your biggest wins, like as a company, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's about the quality, right? And that's what you're after. So, I mean, to that point, Mary is asking, is linking to authoritative sites such as .orgs or .govs helpful at all to building our own authority as a linkable site?
There's a premise hidden in that question that I take issue with. The first part of the question, the answer is yes, linking to authoritative sources. Of course, that's good. Again, think about it from the human perspective. If you ask someone a complex question and they answer it, that's great. If they can quote someone, if they can tell you, and I know because I read it on or I saw it on, that lends credibility to what they're saying. Even if it's an original answer and they've come up with it off the top of their head, if someone can cite their sources and tell you where their information's coming from, it's more credible and they gain credibility and trustworthiness by proxy. A .org is not intrinsically trustworthy. Neither is a .gov, frankly. There tend to be fewer of them, and since most websites are selling something or advertising something, they won't use those domain addresses. But you don't want to get, I know we use that as shorthand a lot of the time to say, oh, it's a school, it's a .edu. But relevance is a little bit more sophisticated than that. You don't have to cite .govs to have trustworthy citations. It's really, is it a primary source or are they quoting someone? Like probably you don't want to link to Wikipedia, which is a .org. You want to look at Wikipedia's list of citations, figure out where the original source is and link to that or quote that. And so it's a great idea and it is absolutely, it's considered in the algorithm. Google looks at that. When we talk about link neighborhoods, the links that surround a backlink to your website affect the value of that link. The links that surround your internal links across and between pages on your site influence Google's perception of those links. Basically, all links matter. So when you have the editorial control of the links that are going to appear in your content, do your homework, cite your sources, be transparent when you're quoting or referencing or building on someone else's ideas, and just make sure that you're also bringing your own unique views, ideas, and information to build on that. Think, what's the Isaac Newton quote? If I've seen further than others, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. I think that's a little before before the internet was a thing, but that is the premise of link building and link neighborhoods right there. Yeah.
Great quote, Norm. So there's quite a number of questions about email examples, subject lines, to do the link building outreach. So I'm going to ask a quick question. So can you tell our readers, our watchers, where they can follow you on social so that they can, grab tips as you're letting them out, and keep up to date on some of these tactics that we're talking about today? Michael, you want to take that?
Follow us at Page One Power on Twitter. We're always promoting great content and assets, and just trade information about link building and SEO there. My personal Twitter is mfjohnson89. So follow me there. Also LinkedIn, sharing a lot of content there. I'm writing an article this month. I talked a lot about authority today, and it's probably because I've been writing an article about authority this month. So I'll be putting out a new article about authority this month. That'll be pretty interesting.
There are plenty of people we follow on. There are plenty of people we follow on the Page One Power official Twitter that anyone in that list as well would be great to follow, and who are in the industry, from content creators to thought leaders and so on.
Perfect. So Macy is asking, do you automate any of your initial outreach or follow-up emails, or should it all be personalized one-to-one? You've taken the time to do the research. What all do you recommend?
I can answer that, I think, a little bit. Just from the content side of things, I typically do really put in the time for my initial emails, and then follow-ups are just that. And so I do automate some of my follow-up emails, but they are very cognizant of the fact that these people might be busy, they might not have seen it, it might have gone to spam. There's so many factors that could have happened in my initial outreach that may just, not be playing in my favor. And then usually the fourth one is I totally understand if you're busy, if the idea isn't good, but you have looked at my portfolio and you want to work together at some point, just let me know. And sometimes that last one that's a little bit lengthier and meatier, instead of just, sorry, did you receive my email or something like that? Sometimes that is the pin, and they respond after the fourth one. I think I don't know the percentages, but I typically get a lot of response from the first email that I send out and the last one that I send out. And so sometimes those middle ones are just, hey, I want you to know I'm interested still. And then they respond after the fourth one where it's clear, I'm not going to contact you again. So if you're still interested, or if you're still taking submissions, please let me know. And sometimes that's just, the cake.
Alex, do you want to add to that?
I had a quick question for Danica. In listening to your answer, it sounds like you will automate the timing, but you never automate the messaging. You're manually deciding how you're going to communicate with these people, and then you can kind of put that messaging on an automated schedule. Is that pretty much accurate?
I think that's pretty fair. The first message is always unique to the audience and to the website for me personally. And then the second and the third are kind of just, hey, I wonder if you've seen this. Those can be automated. And then the fourth is kind of a little bit more just I understand if your schedule is weird. I understand if the pitch wasn't right. Just again, feel free to contact me. And so I think some of the follow-ups can be a little bit more automated, but the first, in my opinion, if it's going to be all of the things we've talked about as a best practice, should be mindful of the audience and mindful of their website.
Yeah, I'd say Dan explained it perfectly. There's, the first email, it should be as personal as possible. There are some things that can be automated, and sometimes it gets really tempting to just automate as much as possible because we're sending 100 a day or 300 a week or whatever. But as just to reiterate again at the 100th time, maybe we're really have human value in mind, and so we do try to make these emails, especially the initial, as personable and as human as possible. So if you can, just avoid the temptation to automate as much as possible. There are things that you can automate that really won't hurt you, but also spend the time. It takes time to really build these relationships, and so you should be willing to spend some of this time.
Yeah. So, we're basically at the end of time. So what I'm going to do is, I know that you all had one last poll, so I am going to go ahead and launch this. And while folks are filling that one out, are you interested in Page One Power's current offer for a free linkable content strategy? So if you can reply to that poll. And like I said, we didn't even scratch the surface on the amount of questions that we had. So many good ones for you all to follow up. You know, with just, you know, like 30 seconds left, I'm just going to close it out. Don't forget, we have a survey at the end of this. Page One Power team, I can't thank you enough for coming and being our guest today, sharing your insight link building campaigns with us. You know, it was a great conversation. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to everyone's questions, but, you know, expect that follow up. And, you know, with that, we bid you adieu. Again, you know, thank you all for coming. Michael, team, Danica, Norm, Alex, Tyler, thank you so much. It was a great show. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello, SEJ. Thank you so much for attending our webinar yesterday. We had so much fun answering your questions, as well as talking about how to build out an effective link building process for your organization. But there were so many questions that we really only were able to scratch the surface. So today what we want to do is go ahead and take some more time to answer some of the questions that didn't get answered on the webinar, and you know, let you hear a little bit more from our team. So let's go ahead. The first question that I wanted to jump in and answer was a question that was given about e-commerce. And they said, if we're in e-commerce, how can we be less salesy? To me, what likely the question was around was probably around the content creation, because we talked a lot about how when you're creating linkable assets, you can't create content that's trying to sell your product or sell your brand. You really have to try to be as altruistic as possible and provide people with helpful, valuable information. So sometimes it's easiest just to describe these, you know, kinds of ideas with examples. So I wanted to show an example of how an e-commerce brand could create a non-salesy piece of content that would connect their website with some really good resource pages and help them earn some great links. So the example that I grabbed was for bestbuy.com. So I mean, you think about e-commerce, that's, you know, e-commerce to the max. And with Best Buy, what I start to think about, right, we talked about this yesterday, was not just the what, but the who. What kind of people might, you know, interact with this brand and how might they benefit from it? But then you also want to find that relevant tie back to the products and services so that you can still, you know, support those and help those. So I started thinking about, okay, they sell computers, laptops, cell phones, TVs, entertainment systems. A lot of it is very technology focused. And from there, you can kind of start to think about, okay, what are some audiences that benefit from technology or could benefit from technology? And how could you create an educational piece for that? So the idea that I came up with was a guide for assistive technologies for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. And what this now enables them to do is to create a really helpful piece of information that helps an audience on the web to have better experiences with entertainment and in life in general by giving them technology to aid in their day-to-day life. And what you'll find is there's some amazing resource pages out on the web, whether it's a .gov resource page from the Disabilities Council from the state of Ohio, or when you start to look at more niche and audience-related pages. This is one from Minnesota Hands and Voices. Again, a really good resource directory, and they have a national organizations section of their resources that they then list out a variety of different resources for their audience there. So really good opportunities there that if they created a piece like this, that could then open up some really good opportunities for them to earn links from an audience that, you know, wants to provide good value to their community. So that's how, as an e-commerce brand, you can be less salesy and create a great linkable asset. Let's go ahead. Anyone else have any other thoughts on that question there, or want to add on top of that?
I think you nailed it.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and go to the next question. And this is one that I have no idea how to answer effectively, but I think we have a couple of people who might. We got a few different questions talking about how to structure or word your outreach emails. This one said, for an email approach, how do you make the subject line compelling? How do you compose the subject line, and what sort of words would you advise using? And then they also asked if we can get an example of what we would say in an outreach email. So I'll go ahead and turn that over to the team here and let them answer that one.
I can hop on board. I do this a lot. I know Alex does too. I think we're both really stoked about this question. And to use a term I think we use a lot in our company, it totally depends. But I think that it's kind of easily explainable. So you're going to want to look at a few things, which are just like, if there's a right for us page, or like if there's like a vibe that you're getting from the website. That's such a dumb term, but like if there's like a vibe that you're getting from a person, like trying to match their tone, trying to match what you think they're looking for is really important. So there is like a research aspect to like doing this kind of thing. Like not one singular tactic is going to work for every website. So you kind of have to study your target sites a little bit. Making a subject line compelling really depends on the kind of outreach that you're doing. Like, I think for me, because I work in content, I'm doing something like article pitch, submission inquiry, something like that, so they know exactly what I'm doing. And if they're too tired to open my email, they will open it later, or they will just delete it. Like they know what's going to be in there. And then something like what I would like a title maybe is how I would do like the subject line kind of thing. Alex, do you do your subject line similarly or differently in the research department?
Well, I really like that you said that it depends, because in the research department, there's also, especially in the outreach team, there's some different strategies that people use, but I mostly do kind of what you said. And I make sure in the subject line, it says like something similar to the title of the piece, and that it's a guide or a resource for the website that I'm outreaching to. Because I like, kind of as you mentioned, I like to be transparent and say, this is what this email is about, or I'm talking about this specific page on your website, something like that, so they know. But other people use something more like, and this is good too, if maybe you are using or outreaching to a more general email, you can just say like hoping to talk to someone, or looking to find this person in the company, things like that.
And then as far as composing the email, again, it depends. Like, I'm sorry, there's no like one size fits all solution for outreach. I think it really is like a practice that you develop and hone over time. And like, I've been at the company for, I think, almost 7 years at this point, and my outreach at the beginning of my job, embarrassing, would never touch it again. But like, it does like grow and develop over time, which I think is something that's really cool. And I think something that's great about working with the team is you're like, this didn't work and I really thought it would. Can you help me figure out why? And just like talking with other people and like developing different ways to do things is really important. But I will say that in general, most of my pitches follow a format that I actually learned while I was like freelancing as a journalist. And I think that those like apply in a very similar way. So what the technique that I follow, generally speaking, was something I read from Rosemary Donahue, who is a digital editor at Allure. So she gets pitched all the time. Like that's her job. She accepts pitches, she edits them, like when they come back in. And her piece is on Medium, and it's titled "How to Pitch Your Work Like You Mean It." And what she describes is, this is a very brief summary. It's just like simple intro, understand what the publication is looking for, be as specific as possible about your idea, provide a potential headline, or if you have multiple headlines, pitch those too. Don't get discouraged if you don't hear back. And then like just my own personal purview, those ideas are not a waste of time. They can be recycled and repurposed. But also, I forgot it. So that's a cut from me.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, if I could, real quick to that, Michael. So this will kind of answer to like maybe the example of what you would say in an outreach email. I think that I also follow a format where I do a quick intro to and say like, this is who I'm working with, or maybe why I'm outreaching to. And then, in the research department, we focus specifically on resource pages that the content that our clients have created or we've created could fit on. And so I like to say, I'm hoping to get in touch with someone about that page specifically because I have another really good resource that can go on that list. And then I briefly describe what that resource does or who it's targeting, why it benefits an audience. And just in case whoever's asking the question is looking for maybe some more specific things, that's kind of where I start with when I'm drafting my emails.
Nice. Very nice. I think I love what it all comes down to at the end of the day. Like, so many people think that link building, and this is probably just because it's the legacy of spam, but that link building is this, like, there's like vagary and trickery, and you create this hooky subject, then gets them in, and then you somehow trick them into linking to your site. And it's like, no, that's not, like, a lot of what you were saying was, hey, I'm going to tell them in the subject line what I'm providing them with, and why, so they can collect why it's good. And I'm just going to describe that in the email to them. And it's like, so much of this stuff is just very logical things, but it kind of comes back to what we talked about in the webinar, which was your outreach really is kind of the capstone of the process. And if you haven't built a good foundation early on, that's where your outreach is going to get really difficult. Where if you've built up a good foundation, then your outreach is just showing the world what you've got, what what great content you've created, or if you're a great writer, like what Danica does, and she's building relationships with publications, she can show them her body of work. And because she's done research on the site, she can pitch them a great article idea that should engage their audience. And yeah, there's always a small percentage of success because it's cold outreach, but you're going to give yourself the best opportunity for success by doing those kinds of things. That's fantastic. Yeah. Let's go ahead and dive into this next question. It says, how important is it to get more .gov or .edu sites to link versus a .com site? I've got some stuff. I'll let you go ahead and answer this one first, then I'll jump in on the back end if no one else has anything else.
I feel like we touched on this really briefly because the example we used in our webinar, we were kind of bragging on the fact that I got some .edu and .govs. That's really just shorthand to say, usually schools are authoritative institutions and they're selective about who they link to. Same thing for government institutions. But the truth is, it's not more important to get .gov and .edus. What really matters is that whatever links you're getting are relevant and the pages that you're getting links to make sense in context for the anchor text wherever you're getting your links. Google has said more or less that explicitly many times over the years, and it's their algorithm. And I think it also just makes intuitive sense. You could get nothing but government links or education links from universities and schools. But if the links don't make sense and they don't add value on the page and there's no reason anyone would ever click on them, that's not a good backlink profile. So I wouldn't worry about the top level domain name. I would worry about what the link is actually doing at an editorial level each and every time, because you want a really robust profile of links that add value, point to a lot of different pages on your site, and come from a lot of different site owners and a lot of different sources. And if some of those are .govs, aces, but what does the link actually look like?
Yeah, the thing that kind of came into my mind was, yeah, .gov and .edu. And of course, it's a nice thing to brag about because, yeah, generally they are trustworthy, authoritative sources that if you get links from those, that's a good sign. But it's, yeah, again, not all .edu or .gov links are alike. I don't know if people those of you who are into link building and do this regularly, a few years ago, scholarship link building, I mean, you could get hundreds of .edu links. And guess what? We did a little bit of it too back in the day. We never saw great results from it. It's, because at the end of the day, it didn't really speak to like unique value that we were providing this audience. There wasn't a lot of relevant ties. And, the game was pretty obvious what people were doing. I'm creating a scholarship just so I can get links. And that's, it's pretty easy to see through. So, to me, it's kind of the same thing. Don't think about, am I getting .gov or .edu links? Think about, am I getting links from trustworthy domains that are reliable sources that have real audiences, engaged audiences. And guess what? Part of that grouping will be .gov and .edu sites, but don't have that be the only audience that you're searching for or trying to get links from, because you're just going to limit your opportunities for success. So that's my thought on that. Anybody else have anything they want to add to that? No. All right.
I think you covered it.
Perfect. So the next one here is, what are your recommendations for link building at the hyper local level? Are there strategies for finding relevant sites that target a specific metro area, for example? I know this is a tough one. Geo-specific link building can be difficult because we talk about this all the time, creating a broad audience to reach out to, casting a wide net. And the minute you get geo-specific, you can shrink that net really quickly. So let me know, does anyone else have any thoughts on that question?
I think, go ahead, Norm.
If you're truly concerned about getting local links, and it does make a ton of sense to look at fully local institutions and websites, actually .edus and .govs can be an option for that, because those are often community institutions. So if you think about state government, city government, county government type websites, I think we plumb those for resource links a lot of the time, because those are the types of websites that are really designed to have a static resource page to serve, dentists in this area or small business resources in this area. And it scales really well because everywhere has at least some level of a local government connection. Libraries can be great for that because they really serve the entire community, not just physically in the materials that they offer, but as an online information resource. Tourism boards, whether those are nonprofits or governmental, are really good. And chambers of commerce and other like business organizations, anything that serves like a business networking purpose, really any social networking. There's different social clubs that scale really well across any jurisdiction, any level of locality. And so if you can just kind of tap into who are these organizations, governmental and non-governmental, nonprofit, you may not find a lot, but the fact that they are the genuine local deal will count for a lot.
Yeah, I think that was 100% correct. I would also look at sometimes real estate agents as well. They can get hyper local. Sometimes you run into no follow links and things like that with those particular sites, or they might be more inclined to ask for some kind of compensation. But really, when it comes to hyper local, something we see a lot of clients or websites do is they miss out on optimizing their local pages. So are your Google My Business set up appropriately? Or do you have consistent phone numbers listed? Do you have a consistent address? Does it say street versus ST or avenue? Is it abbreviated or not? And so on. Really start at some of the fundamentals, very similar to website design. Can your website be crawled? Do your pages work? Things like that. Make sure that those are in line, I think, before you start getting into the hyper local. And of course, community outreach, things like that as well. We pride ourselves on being a Boise organization or an Idaho specific organization, and in turn that we get out there.
Yeah,
I think too.
Oh, go ahead, Danica. Yeah.
Sorry, very briefly. I think there's a difference sometimes with like people who do have like a specific oriented place. Like realtors is a great example. We've worked with several where they are hyper focused on a specific thing and hope to get links to specific like location or geo oriented kinds of pages. And that makes it really hard to do a campaign. So I think it goes back to what are your actual goals and like how can you facilitate them? Because from my perspective as like a content person, sometimes just like best houses in LA isn't going to fly everywhere, so I think it just comes back to like resetting your priorities, what you want out of the campaign, talking to the clients about that, and just reining them in a little bit maybe, but like also just like listening to what they want, and like maybe like broad scale, just like wherever on the internet isn't the right thing to do, if that makes sense.
I totally agree with that. And when we're trying to facilitate a link building campaign on the content creation side, absolutely, there can be merit to getting those local links, and that's a worthwhile campaign goal. But having a local business or having a geo-specific page or keyword doesn't necessarily preclude you from getting a lot of value from still creating a more general resource that can earn links from a lot of different places. So I would agree, a good local backlink profile, or rather a good profile for a local website, isn't just local links. It should still be a healthy mix. So you have to have content that certainly serves your local website and is optimized for those locations or for that area. But you also probably have an opportunity to go bigger and reach a more broad audience with more robust content and assets.
Yeah, the way I like to think about it is like your spheres of relevancy. Like as a geo-specific business, yes, your local community is a sphere of relevance. And one of the things that kind of comes into my mind with that is if you want to get links from your community, then be active in your community, participate in events, sponsor things, build connections with other businesses, do things like that. That's one of the best things that you can do, is actually participate and help in your community. That's a great way to get your name out there, get links. We get a lot of news, a lot of links from local news outlets for our clients with unlinked mentions, because they're getting these PR type opportunities. And then we just follow up on the back end of those and say, hey, we saw that KRTV mentioned your, our client, let's reach out to them and suggest they include a link. So things like that happen. And then the other part of your sphere of relevancy is your industry, is your area of expertise. And there are tons of nationwide sites and our publications. But if you're a dentist and your content is how to get whiter teeth in Minneapolis, Minnesota, why would a nationwide health blog want to link to your article about that? Instead, write these topics just showing your expertise, and then you can get yourself opportunities to get links from these other sites. I think that's kind of what Norm and Dan were talking about, is just not just creating that local geospecific content, but casting a wider net by thinking more industry specific and what you do there. All right. The next one is, how do you find relevant websites for link building? This one's a little bit of a broad question, but I'll go ahead and let's kind of talk about how we can find relevant sites, or maybe even maybe we can find an example if someone can think of the top of their heads, in a certain place, how they would find relevant sites and opportunities.
I think for me, from the content perspective, it depends. I mean, like, link building starts so much earlier in the process than the link building itself. And I think we've talked about that maybe to death. I'm sorry. But it's one of those things where, like, if you're thinking of a piece of content that's fitting the audience should be very easy to find from that point. And so even if you're going like Boolean, just like basic Google, what is the audience? Does it exist? Whatever. You'll be able to find something if you've created content for an audience. So just like those preliminary searches are really important. I think for like something I can think of like off the top of my head, we had a client that was in the wedding industry. I think they sell jewelry or something. We were thinking through the content creation process, and we're just like, what is an audience that would be interested in weddings, but like outside the box of just like, how do you know the ring size of jewelry? Because like, is that linkable? Like, debatable, but like, what is an audience that's like going through like a proposal or like a wedding ceremony interested in? And I was thinking like, oh, like just based on my own experience, like blended families are a thing. A lot of people might have questions about what it's like getting married when you have like a blended family, if you have kids, like, so it's not like directly related to the sale that they're trying to make, like the conversion, but it's a question that their audience might have. And then from there, you might move on to, okay, like parenting blogs, stuff that talks about families, lifestyle things, things that talk about parenthood. There's like a huge audience there for that might not be interested in, jewelry sales specifically, but it makes sense for their audience still, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Perfect. Let's jump really quick. We got about 3 minutes left, so we're going to try to see if we can shoot through some quick questions here. There's one that I think when we all saw it, we all got excited and wanted to answer it. So I want to make sure we answer this one. It says, I have seen so much rubbish or low quality content, which doesn't add value over on Forbes.com or sites just like it. And still those content pages rank in Google SERPs. Does it happen due to the domain authority or the popularity of the brand? ? So kind of wondering, why does this lower quality content sometimes tend to rank on these bigger quality sites, or on these bigger authority sites?
Potentially lots of reasons. That's an unfortunate reality. We like to attribute Google with this infinite capacity to reward the best and weed out the worst. But the algorithm is imperfect. That's why it keeps getting updated. That's why the SERPs keep on shuffling. They shouldn't be completely static, because even the best answer can change over time. What we mean from words changes over time. So something that I tell our writers internally a lot is, when you're looking at a SERP and you're trying to figure out what is Google ranking right now? What passes for a good answer? Something that you kind of have to look critically at is, are these pages ranking because they're the best, or do they rank in spite of numerous obvious glaring deficits? And it can be hard to tell sometimes unless you really know the subject matter or you have a really deep understanding of like an objective fact or something like that. You kind of have to look critically. I often tell our writers, don't copy what is ranking at the top of page 1. Look at what's at the top of page 2 and do a little compare contrast, draw a Venn diagram. So the specific reasons of why something ranks, even though it's not the best, are as varied and impossible to pin down as all the reasons why something ranks at all. It could be that they have just an insurmountable advantage because the brand is older. It got there first. I talk about getting there first being one of those unspoken ranking factors. If you're the first person to really own a keyword or serve an audience, you can rank for a really long time through sheer inertia. Big brands like Forbes that are just like content clearinghouses, yeah, they've got name recognition, they've got some domain authority, and sometimes stinkers rise to the top just because of other things. The good news is if you do a lot of things right, clearly this is evidence that Google will forgive the occasional misstep. So if you have a really strong pattern of consistently answering questions and addressing important keywords really effectively, that can end up rewarding you even when you don't necessarily get it 100% right. It's not like every single page you make has to be perfect. If you have a good track record, then sometimes you can kind of get away with it. And it's unfortunate for us when we would rather outrank something we recognize as not great, but it kind of works both ways.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Norm. And yeah, just to add on top of that, we have to wrap this up. So thank you all so much for checking out this extended Q&A. It was a pleasure speaking with you all. And if you want us to continue to answer more questions, we are happy to do so. In the email that you got from us in the follow-up, there's an offer to do a one-on-one consult with a member of our team where we'll continue to answer questions just like this, as well as provide you examples that are more particular to your unique situation. So thank you all so much from me and the Page One Power team, and we hope to see you all soon.
Bye, thank you.